Well, I wanted to go off the fiscal cliff. What's the worst that could happen? Unfortunately, we didn't go off the cliff, but does Congress have the right to do so? Rob Natelson is from the Independence Institute, our constitutional scholar. Thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
And if you don't have this book, The Original Constitution, go to Amazon, pick this up. It's the layman's guide to the Constitution, and really well worth it. All right, you made us.
I agree with you on that. I have to disagree with you on one point, though. It's true Congress didn't let the government go off the cliff, but it pushed all the rest of us off the cliff.
That's true. Before we get into whether the compromise was good, bad, or indifferent, was it constitutional in your mind? And tell me what you were thinking there, because you're not the only person to have made that observation.
Yeah, not as a matter of the spirit of the Constitution. You read the Constitution, it says that revenue bills, tax increase bills, are supposed to originate in the House. And what we saw both in this negotiation and in the last negotiation involving budgetary crisis management is we saw a lot of discussion of the president's plan, and we saw resolution of the matter in the Senate. And even if as a matter of form there's HR at the top of the bill indicating it formally comes from the House, that's not the way the system's supposed to work. The way the system's supposed to work is the House is supposed to pass a budget with these tax increases if the House deems necessary, and that serves as the basis for negotiation.
Because it's right there in Section 1, I think it's in Article 1, is it in Section 8? I forget that. It says all tax bills originate from the House of Representatives.
You're getting more impressive every day. It's very close. It's
Article 7.7.
Article 1, Section 7. That's right. They all originate.
It's not that I don't know my Constitution. I just don't know math.
Yeah, and there was recently a law professor wrote an article in the New York Times in which he revealed his ignorance by saying, who cares if it starts with the House? But in fact, there are 700 years of English and American constitutional history behind that. There are very good reasons for starting tax bills in the House.
Tell me why. What's the big reason to start it?
What
were the founders thinking when they said, if it's a tax bill, you start it in the House and then it goes to the Senate?
Well, the biggest single reason, John, is probably the matter of apportionment. The Senate represents, at least in part, the states, but states don't pay taxes. Individuals pay taxes. So the House of Representatives is much more closely affiliated, or much more closely aligned with population than the Senate is. But there are other reasons as well. I mean, one of the fears is because the Senate doesn't have very many people in it. It's relatively small. You could actually get a majority of a quorum with only 26 senators. The risk of oligarchy becomes higher, the risk of what the founders called combination. And then because the House is much more numerous, because the districts are much smaller, it represents more different kinds of interest. It's more likely to represent the overall interest. And it's tougher to bribe in the Senate because it's a good deal larger.
Tougher to bribe in the Senate? That's why I've had no luck.
Tougher to bribe in the House.
Really?
Than in
Why?
The Senate, because of the sheer number of them.
Oh, you got to pay. You got to pay more.
You got to pay more.
Okay.
And that's not just common sense. There actually have been empirical studies that look at the question of, is a large legislative body or a small legislative body easier to lobby or easier to bribe? And the answer is, if you want better government, you want to have larger legislative.
Really? So those states, I think, is it Kansas or I forget which, has like 300, 400 state legislators.
New Hampshire has maybe 30 in the Senate and 400 and some odd in the House.
Oh my God!
And the research says that's good.
No, that feels so very wrong.
I know, because fiscal conservatives often say, well, why don't we just reduce the number of politicians? But that's actually a false economy in the case of the legislature.
I'm going to have to drink a bottle of scotch on that one before I come to a conclusion. I would also think that the founders thought that the Senate, which was originally, senators were chosen by state legislative bodies, so there was and now it's a popular vote, that the House was much closer to the people, and since they're the ones that are going to have to pay the taxes, that it would start from there. So
that's certainly part of it. But the House, in many ways, is still closer to the people because the districts are smaller. You've got
and they get elected every 2 years.
Yeah,
all of them.
And every 2 years. That's right. And so if they pass a bad tax bill, they're up for election right away, where only a third of the senators are.
Let me ask you this then: if it's against the words of the Constitution, well, can't we just sue to get rid of the fiscal cliff bargain? I mean, can't we just say, excuse me, Supreme Court, it says starts in the House, this one started in the Senate, null and void?
It's an interesting question because there's a lawsuit going on right now on a similar issue. As most people who follow this know, the Obamacare mandate was held by the Supreme Court as being a tax, and in fact it was upheld only because it was held to be a tax. But Obamacare was substantially written in the Senate. I mean, they took an old House bill and they gutted the old House bill and they stuck the Senate version in there, but it really began in the Senate. Well, the Pacific Law the Pacific Law Foundation has begun a lawsuit to invalidate the mandate on exactly that grounds. If the mandate's a tax, and it started in the Senate instead of the House, it should not be constitutional. So we'll see how that lawsuit comes out.
I hadn't heard about it. When are we going to hear this one? Is it going to make it all the way up?
Oh, it's making it around the web, but you know, John, there's just too much stuff on the web to follow everything.
Oh my God! I tell you what, let me ask you a local legal question.
Yeah, sure.
There is a lawsuit, the Kerr lawsuit, against the Taxpayer Bill of Rights here in Colorado.
Yeah.
Taxpayer Bill of Rights have been around for 2 decades. It has saved Colorado from the fiscal ruin enjoyed by California and other states that didn't restrain spending during their good times and then went wildly over budget afterwards. They say that Tabor is a violation not of the state constitution here in Colorado, but of the federal constitution. And they say that legislators are the only ones that have the ability to raise taxes, that this is invalid because it came from the people as an initiative, and that the Constitution, the federal Constitution that your book talks about, says states will do revenue for their state. So therefore, Tabor is unconstitutional by the federal Constitution. Why are they wrong?
Well, with all respect, I don't think they did their homework before they filed the lawsuit. They're claiming that allowing people to vote directly on taxes or other measures violates that part of the Constitution which says that every state has to have a Republican form of government. But,
by the way, small r. Republican.
Small r, yes. And the record from the founding era is really clear. A Republican government includes allowing the people to vote on public measures directly. In fact, at the time the founders wrote, most of the republics in the history of the world had systems whereby all the laws were actually passed through the people. So I don't think that has legs. You could never absolutely predict what a court will do, and that's a matter of concern because, John, if you look at their complaint, they're not just complaining about the people voting on tax increases. They want to invalidate all of Tabor, including checks on spending increases and checks on debt.
But they're not saying that we want to get rid of Tabor, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, because it's bad policy. They're saying we want to get rid of Tabor because it's unconstitutional, very similar to what you said, the lawsuit going forward against Obamacare because it started in the wrong chamber.
Yes, but if they're successful, then they put the constitutions of 49 states in significant jeopardy.
How so?
Because 49 states have special restrictions on the legislature's ability either to tax or to spend or to go into debt, or all three of those. The debt limitations, for example, Tabor includes limits on the ability of the legislature to go into debt without a popular vote. Similar measures in other state constitutions like that go back to the 1840s because they discovered that when you didn't put limitations on the ability of the legislature to go into debt, states often went bankrupt.
Go figure.
Right. And just as we have now learned that if you don't put tax and spending limitations on states, then you get situations like they have in California or Illinois or New York where they're teetering toward bankruptcy.
Because they have the ability to spend more than they bring in.
That's right.
All right.
None of the states that have controls like Tabor, and there are a fair number of them, is in financial trouble. But quite a few states that don't have Tabors are in financial trouble.
Again, you're saying it's good policy. But they're going to say, yeah, but the founders said you couldn't do it. You're pretty confident that's not going to fly.
I don't think that's going to fly because the founding era record is so clear that you can have popular votes in a republic.
Hey, I appreciate it. Again, this is even I can understand this. I mean,
well,
I had to have my daughter read it to me, but still it was good. The original Constitution, go to Amazon. Rob Natelson, thank you so much. And thank you so much. By the way, listen for me Sunday afternoons, evenings on KHOW, that's 6:30 KHOW. Check out the Independence Institute. Go to independenceinstitute.org. Find a few great podcasts at ivoices.org. And send me $20 because I could use it. See you next week.